The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Senate chamber stretched high above the gathered representatives. 847 different species sat in their specially designed seats, each one built to match their unique biology. Some floated in tanks of liquid methane, others hung from the ceiling in energy fields. A few existed only as glowing clouds of gas contained in transparent boxes. Sarah Chen stood at the human podium, her hands gripping the metal rail. She had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Senate for 12 years. In all that time, she had never seen the chamber this tense. The air itself seemed to vibrate with anger and fear. "The emergency session will now begin," announced Speaker Zethkalar, a towering insect-like being with 4 arms and compound eyes that glowed purple in the dim light. His voice echoed through translation devices, turning his clicks and buzzes into words every species could understand. Sarah looked around the chamber. The human section was almost empty. Only she and 2 assistants remained. Most of Earth's allies sat in small clusters looking worried. But the rest of the chamber was packed. Species that normally avoided each other now sat together, united by one thing, their fear of humanity. "We are here today," Speaker Zethkalar continued, "to discuss the motion brought by the Vorthak hegemony. They claim that humanity poses a threat to galactic peace and should be removed from the Senate." A ripple of movement went through the chamber. The Vorthak representative, a being that looked like living crystal, stood up. Light reflected off its faceted surface as it spoke. "Honored Speaker, fellow senators." The Vorthak's voice was like glass breaking. "We have watched humanity for 150 years. They arrived as a small, weak species from a tiny world. We welcomed them. We shared our knowledge. We helped them grow." Sarah felt her stomach twist. She knew what was coming. "But look what they have become," the Vorthak continued. "In just over a century, they have spread to 300 worlds. Their military grows stronger every year. Their technology advances faster than any species in recorded history. They make alliances and break them when it suits their needs." "That's not true," Sarah called out, but Speaker Zethkalar's staff struck the floor with a sharp crack. "The human representative will remain silent until called upon," the speaker said. The Vorthak representative gestured with one crystalline arm. "Just last year, humans refused to share their new fusion technology with the Collective Science Board. They said it was too dangerous for other species. But they use it to power their own warships. They hoard knowledge while claiming to promote cooperation." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarah wanted to explain that the fusion technology was still being tested, that humans were being careful because they cared about other species' safety. But she could only stand and listen. "There is more," said another voice. This came from the Nebular Collective, a group of beings that lived in the gas clouds between stars. Their representative appeared as a swirling mist inside a containment field. "Humans have established military bases in 17 neutral systems. They claim these are for peacekeeping, but their fleets grow larger each year. They patrol space lanes that do not belong to them." Sarah's hands tightened on the rail. The humans had built those bases to protect trade routes from pirates and hostile forces. They had saved countless lives and billions of credits in cargo, but now it was being twisted into something sinister. "We have also received reports," added a delegate from the Serpentine Empire, "that humans have been conducting secret research. They build facilities on remote asteroids and moons. When asked about these installations, they claim they are for defensive purposes only. But why the secrecy if their intentions are peaceful?" The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species that had barely spoken to each other in decades were now nodding in agreement. Sarah watched in horror as a century and a half of human diplomatic work crumbled before her eyes. Speaker Zethkalar struck his staff again. "Order! We will hear from the human representative now." Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding. She had prepared for this moment. But facing the angry faces of hundreds of alien species was more terrifying than she had imagined. "Honored Speaker, fellow senators," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "The accusations against humanity are based on fear, not facts. Yes, we have grown quickly. Yes, we have spread to many worlds. But we have always followed Senate law. We have always honored our agreements." She gestured toward the small section where Earth's allies sat. "The Corvan Republic can tell you how human medical technology saved millions of their people. During the plague of 2387, the Free Traders Union knows that human security forces have protected their cargo ships from raiders for over 50 years. The Academic Alliance has access to human research data going back decades. Selective sharing, shouted the Vorthak representative. You give scraps to your friends while hiding your greatest discoveries. We share what is safe to share, Sarah replied firmly. Our fusion technology is still experimental. The energy levels involved could destroy entire star systems if something goes wrong. We are not hiding it out of greed. We are protecting everyone until we know it is safe. And your military buildup? Demanded the Nebular Collective. How do you explain warships that can destroy planets? We build ships to defend ourselves and our allies, Sarah said. The galaxy is not a peaceful place. There are hostile species beyond our borders. There are pirates and raiders who attack innocent civilians. Our ships protect trade routes and colony worlds. Your ships could also conquer them, hissed the Serpentine delegate. Sarah felt the weight of 800 alien gazes upon her. She took a deep breath and spoke the words she hoped would save humanity's place in the galactic community. We have never attacked a peaceful world. We have never broken a treaty. We have never used our strength to bully weaker species. Everything we have done has been to make the galaxy safer and more prosperous for everyone. But she could see in their eyes that her words were not enough. Fear had taken hold, and fear was stronger than logic. Speaker Zethkalar raised his staff. The motion before us is clear. The Vorthak hegemony proposes that humanity be expelled from the Galactic Senate for aggressive expansion and threatening behavior. All those in favor of the motion will now cast their votes. The voting system activated. Lights began appearing across the chamber. Red for yes, green for no, blue for abstention. Sarah watched in growing horror as red lights dominated the display. One by one, species that had worked with humans for generations cast their votes against Earth. The final tally appeared on the main screen. 623 votes in favor of expulsion, 224 against, and 47 abstentions. Speaker Zethkalar's voice was formal and cold. The motion passes. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Senate. All human colonies in Senate space must be evacuated within 30 standard days. All human military forces must withdraw beyond Senate borders. All technology sharing agreements are hereby terminated. Sarah felt the world spinning around her. She gripped the podium to keep from falling. Around her, the aliens were already standing up, talking among themselves as if the humans had already vanished. This session is adjourned, Speaker Zethkalar announced. As the chamber began to empty, Sarah remained at her podium, staring at the results on the screen. 150 years of human progress in galactic society had just been erased by a single vote. But deep in her mind, a small voice whispered that this might not be the end. It might be the beginning of something much bigger, something the galaxy was not prepared for. The emergency meeting room in Earth's capital was thick with tension. President Martinez sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by military commanders, diplomats, and intelligence officers. The holographic display showed the grim reality. 43 human colonies scattered across Senate space, home to over 2 billion people. We have 30 days to evacuate everyone, said General Patterson, his weathered face grim. That's impossible. We don't have enough ships. The Senate knows that, replied Admiral Chen, Sarah's sister. They're counting on us leaving people behind. It gives them an excuse to take hostages or worse. President Martinez rubbed his temples. What about our allies? Can any of them help? Foreign Minister Williams shook her head. The Corvin Republic wants to help, but they're afraid of Senate retaliation. The Free Traders Union is willing to carry some refugees, but they can't risk their trading licenses. Most of our allies are staying quiet, hoping this blows over. It's not going to blow over, said Director Hayes from Intelligence. Our sources say the Senate has already started dividing up human territories. The Vorthak want our mining colonies. The Nebular Collective is claiming our research stations. They're treating this like a victory celebration. Commander Torres, recently returned from the Outer Rim, leaned forward. There's something else. During my last patrol, I intercepted communications between Vorthak ships. They've been copying our shield technology for years. They're using modified versions of our own designs. The room fell silent. Admiral Chen was the first to speak. Are you certain? I have the data recordings, Torres replied. They didn't just steal our technology. They improved it. Some of their ships have better shields than ours now. President Martinez stood up slowly. They've been planning this for years. The vote wasn't sudden anger. It was calculated. Sir, General Patterson said quietly, we need to discuss Protocol 7. Everyone in the room knew about Protocol 7. It was the plan nobody wanted to use. The plan that meant humanity was truly alone against the galaxy. Not yet, the President said. We still have options. Start the evacuations. Use every ship we have. Commandeer civilian vessels if necessary, and activate our sleeper networks. Dr. Reyes, the head of Colonial Affairs, looked confused. Sleeper networks? Director Hayes smiled grimly. For the past 50 years, we've been placing intelligence operatives in key positions throughout Senate space. Scientists, traders, maintenance workers, even some government officials. They've been living normal lives, building relationships, gathering information. Now it's time to wake them up. The evacuations began immediately. Human cargo ships, passenger liners, and military transports worked around the clock. Families packed whatever they could carry, leaving behind homes and businesses built over generations. The sight of human refugees streaming through spaceports brought tears to even the hardest military officers. But the aliens were not content to simply watch humans leave. On Kepler 442b, one of humanity's oldest colonies, Vorthak forces arrived 3 days early. They claimed the humans were moving too slowly and began seizing government buildings and industrial facilities. Colony Administrator Johnson tried to protest. We still have 5 days left according to the Senate decree. The Vorthak commander, a massive crystal being named Veltar, dismissed him with a wave. The deadline is flexible. Your people may finish packing, but this world now belongs to the hegemony. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. The Serpentine Empire took control of the agricultural world of New Eden before the harvest was complete, leaving both humans and local alien workers without food. The Nebular Collective moved into the research station orbiting Proxima Centauri, claiming they needed to secure dangerous human experiments. What they found surprised them. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been the lead researcher at the Proxima station for 8 years. When the Nebular forces arrived, they expected to find weapons research or forbidden experiments. Instead, they discovered something unexpected. A joint research project involving 17 different species. This cannot be correct, said the Nebular commander. A swirling mass of gas and energy named Wispiner. Humans do not collaborate. They hoard knowledge. Dr. Vasquez, a small woman with graying hair and calm eyes, smiled at the alien officer. Perhaps you don't know humans as well as you think. She led the Nebular team through the station, showing them laboratory after laboratory where human scientists worked alongside Corvin engineers, Altarian biologists, and even a few young Vorthak researchers. The projects ranged from agricultural improvements to medical breakthroughs to clean energy solutions. The Senate was told that humans only share with their closest allies, Wispinor said, confusion clear in his translated voice. The Senate was told many things, Dr. Vasquez replied. Most of them were lies. As the aliens examined the research data, they found something else troubling. Many of the projects had been funded not by Earth's government, but by a private foundation called the Galactic Advancement Initiative. The foundation had been quietly supporting scientific research across hundreds of worlds for over 30 years. Who runs this foundation? Demanded Wispiner. Dr. Vasquez pulled up the records. Scientists from 43 different species. Humans make up only about 20% of the board members. Back on Earth, the government was discovering the true scope of humanity's hidden networks. Intelligence reports poured in from across the galaxy. Human refugees were not just running away. They were disappearing into underground networks that nobody had known existed. On the industrial world of Titan 7, 3,000 human workers simply vanished overnight. Security cameras showed them leaving their dormitories, but they never arrived at the spaceport. The local authorities found no trace of where they had gone. Similar disappearances occurred on dozens of worlds. Humans with critical skills, engineers, doctors, computer specialists, ship pilots, were vanishing without a trace. The aliens who had taken over human facilities found themselves unable to operate the complex systems their former owners had left behind. It's like they took the keys with them, complained a Serpentine administrator trying to restart. A power plant on New Babylon, Commander Torres, now promoted to lead the evacuation efforts, received a coded message on his personal communicator. The sender was someone he had never heard of, but the encryption was definitely human military grade. Package delivery is proceeding smoothly, the message read. Customers are very satisfied with the service. Some have decided to stay for the extended warranty program. Torres smiled for the first time in weeks. The customers were humans who had chosen not to evacuate. The extended warranty program meant they were going underground, becoming part of a resistance network that was apparently much larger than anyone had imagined. 2 weeks into the evacuation, President Martinez received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Krevlon of the Corvan Republic arrived on Earth without advance notice, using a diplomatic courier ship to avoid Senate surveillance. "Mr. President," the reptilian alien said in his careful English, "my government wishes you to know that we disagree with the Senate's decision. We cannot help openly, but we want to help." "What are you proposing?" Martinez asked. "Safe passage for your refugees through Corvan space, temporary homes on our frontier worlds, and other assistance that cannot be discussed in official channels." Martinez studied the alien's scarred face. The Corvan were warriors, proud and honorable. If they were willing to risk Senate displeasure, the situation was more complex than anyone realized. "How many others feel the way you do?" Krevlon's tongue flicked out, a sign of nervousness among his people. "More than the Senate realizes. Much more." As the 30-day deadline approached, the galaxy began to understand that removing humanity would not be as simple as the Senate had hoped. The humans were leaving, but they were not disappearing. They were going underground, building networks and finding allies in unexpected places. The vote that was meant to weaken humanity had instead revealed the true extent of their influence. And that influence ran much deeper than anyone had imagined. 3 months had passed since the Senate vote, and the galaxy was beginning to realize they had made a serious mistake. What started as a simple expulsion had become something much more complicated. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in a small cafe on the trading station Nexus 9, sipping synthetic coffee and reading reports on her tablet. To anyone watching, she looked like any other refugee scientist looking for work. In reality, she was coordinating one of the largest underground networks in galactic history. "The shipment from Sector 7 is ready," said the woman sitting across from her. She appeared to be Altarian, with the typical blue-tinted skin and large eyes of that species. But her accent was pure human, from the colonies around Vega. Dr. Vasquez nodded without looking up from her tablet. "And the transport?" "Corvan freight hauler, Captain Zexmore commanding. He's been moving our people for 6 weeks now. Never asks questions, never reports his cargo manifest correctly." This was the new reality. Humans who had evacuated from Senate space were still there, hidden in plain sight. Some used advanced holographic disguises to appear as other species. Others had undergone temporary genetic modifications to change their appearance. Many simply relied on forged identity documents and the fact that most aliens still could not tell humans apart very well. The network was vast and growing. In just 3 months, they had established safe houses on over 200 worlds, created smuggling routes through 17 different star systems, and built communication networks that could carry messages across the galaxy in hours instead of weeks. But they were not alone. On the mining world of Zerion 4, a Corvan security chief named Torvak was having a very bad day. His superiors had ordered him to find and arrest any remaining humans on the planet. The problem was that every time he thought he had found one, the local population seemed to develop sudden blindness and memory problems. "Captain Torvak," said his deputy, a young Corvan named Kelsha, "we've searched the mining complex 3 times. There are no humans here." "That's impossible," Torvak growled. "Intelligence says at least 50 human engineers were working here when the evacuation order came. They can't have all left." What Torvak didn't know was that 37 human engineers were indeed still on Zerion 4. They were hiding in the old mining tunnels, equipped with portable life support systems and enough supplies to last months. But more importantly, they were not hiding alone. Kelsha, his own deputy, was actually half human. Her mother had been a human trader who married a Corvan warrior 20 years ago. The marriage had been kept secret to protect both families from prejudice, but it had produced a daughter who looked fully Corvan but thought like a human. She was not the only one. Across the galaxy, the Senate was discovering that humanity's influence ran much deeper than anyone had realized. 50 years of intermarriage, adoption, and cultural exchange had created thousands of individuals who were technically citizens of other species, but had strong ties to humanity. On the aquatic world of Coral Sea, The Nautilian government was puzzled by the sudden increase in equipment failures at their underwater cities. Life support systems that had worked perfectly for decades were now breaking down weekly. The Nautilian technicians couldn't understand why their human-designed machinery was becoming so unreliable. They didn't realize that engineer Marcus Webb was still living in underwater city Beta, disguised as a Nautilian maintenance worker. His breathing apparatus allowed him to work underwater, and his modified appearance fooled most casual observers. Every few days he would sabotage a system just enough to require repair, then volunteer to fix it. This gave him access to critical infrastructure and allowed him to gather intelligence about Nautilian military preparations. Marcus was part of a growing resistance movement that the Senate was only beginning to understand. These were not refugees or evacuees. These were humans who had chosen to stay behind and fight back in their own quiet way. Dr. Vasquez received a coded message that made her smile. It was from Captain Sarah Chen, the former Earth ambassador who is now working with the underground networks. Package delivery service expanding rapidly. The message read, "New customers signing up daily. Customer satisfaction extremely high." The new customers were non-human species who were secretly helping the resistance. What had started as a few sympathetic individuals had grown into something much larger. On the desert world of Arrakis 7, the local Sandwalker tribe had been struggling with water purification problems for months. Their old systems were breaking down, and the Senate had not provided replacement parts. Then a Sandwalker engineer appeared in their main settlement, offering to help repair the systems. The engineer was actually Dr. James Park, a human hydrologist who had been working in the sector for 8 years. His modified appearance and perfect knowledge of Sandwalker culture made him nearly impossible to detect. Within a week, he had not only repaired their water systems but improved them significantly. "Why help us?" asked Elder Threshka, the tribal leader. "You owe us nothing." Dr. Park smiled, his disguised features showing genuine warmth. "Because it's the right thing to do. My people have always believed that knowledge should be shared to help others." Word of the mysterious engineer spread quickly through the Sandwalker communication networks. Soon other tribes were reporting similar visits from helpful engineers who appeared suddenly, solved critical problems, then disappeared just as mysteriously. The Sandwalkers began to suspect that their helpers were not actually members of their species. But instead of reporting them to Senate authorities, they did something unexpected. They started helping the helpers. This pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. Species that had initially supported the anti-human vote were beginning to realize that humanity had been helping them in ways they had never understood. Medical clinics run by local doctors who were actually humans in disguise. Engineering firms staffed by humans pretending to be other species. Research laboratories where human scientists worked under false identities. The Senate had expected that removing humans would weaken the galaxy's technological and scientific capabilities. Instead, they discovered that human knowledge was so deeply integrated into galactic civilization that removing it openly was impossible. The humans had simply gone underground, continuing their work in secret. Director Hayes, Earth's former intelligence chief, was now operating from a hidden base in the asteroid belt of an uninhabited system. The base looked like an abandoned mining station, but it was actually the coordination center for the largest espionage network in galactic history. "Status report," he said to his team of analysts. "Network expansion continues ahead of schedule," reported Agent Martinez. "We now have active cells on 374 worlds. Recruitment is exceeding expectations, especially among younger members of species that voted against us." "What about the older generation?" Hayes asked. "Mixed results. The leadership of species like the Vorthak and Nebular Collective remain hostile, but many of their citizens are beginning to question the official narrative, especially as they realize how much their daily lives depended on human contributions." Agent Torres, formerly Commander Torres, added his own report. "Military intelligence indicates growing tension within the Senate coalition. The Corvin Republic is openly questioning the vote. The Academic Alliance is refusing to implement some of the anti-human policies. Several smaller species are considering withdrawing from the Senate entirely." Hayes nodded. "And our friends in the Galactic Advancement Initiative?" "Still operating," Agent Martinez replied. The Senate tried to shut them down, but the Foundation is technically independent and funded by multiple species. They're continuing their research projects, just with more human scientists working under assumed identities. Dr. Vasquez, listening to the conversation through encrypted communication links, felt a surge of pride. The foundation she had helped establish decades ago was now one of the Resistance's most valuable assets. By funding scientific research across multiple species, they had created relationships and dependencies that the Senate could not easily break. But the most surprising development was happening among the younger generation of aliens. Students at universities across the galaxy were beginning to protest the anti-human policies. They had grown up with human teachers, human classmates, and human ideas about cooperation and equality. On the academic world of Sophia Prime, thousands of alien students staged peaceful demonstrations demanding the return of their human professors. When security forces tried to disperse the crowds, something unprecedented happened. Students from 12 different species linked arms and refused to move. "We learned about civil rights from Professor Johnson," shouted a young Vorthak student, her crystal body flashing with emotional colors. "We learned about justice from Dr. Kim. We learned about courage from Captain Martinez. These humans taught us to think for ourselves. Now you want us to forget everything they taught us?" The protest spread to other worlds. The Senate found itself facing something it had never encountered before. A generation of young aliens who saw humans not as threats, but as teachers and friends. In her small cafe on Nexus 9, Dr. Vasquez read the latest reports and smiled. The Senate had voted to expel humanity from galactic civilization. But they had forgotten one important thing. Ideas cannot be 6 months after the vote that expelled humanity from the Galactic Senate. The galaxy was falling apart. Senator Veltar of the Vorthak hegemony stood before a massive holographic display showing economic data from across Senate space. The numbers were terrible. Trade between major systems had dropped by 40%. Energy production was down 30%. Food distribution networks were failing on dozens of worlds. "How is this possible?" demanded Supreme Chancellor Kethamore, the elderly Vorthak leader whose crystal body had begun to dim with age. "We removed the humans. We took control of their territories and resources. Why are we weaker instead of stronger?" Veltar gestured to the display with one crystalline arm. "The humans were more integrated into our economy than we realized. They didn't just control their own territories. They designed and maintained systems throughout Senate space. The truth was becoming clear across the galaxy. For over a century, humans had quietly become the engineers, technicians, and logistical experts that kept galactic civilization running. They had designed more efficient cargo routes, improved energy distribution systems, and created communication networks that connected thousands of worlds. Now those systems were failing. On the manufacturing world of Titan Prime, the massive industrial complexes that produced everything from starship components to medical supplies had ground to a halt. The Serpentine administrators, who had taken control after the human evacuation, discovered that the factories were far more complex than they appeared. "The assembly lines are controlled by neural networks," explained Chief Engineer Slythara to the planetary governor. "The humans programmed them with learning algorithms that adapt to changes in production requirements. We cannot simply operate them manually." "Then reprogram them," the governor hissed through his translator. "We have tried. The code is incredibly complex. Our best computer specialists estimate it would take years to understand how the systems work, and decades to rebuild them from scratch." Similar problems were occurring throughout the galaxy. The Nebular Collective had taken control of the gas mining operations in the Horsehead Nebula, only to discover that the extraction equipment required constant adjustments that only human technicians seemed to understand. The Altarian Federation found that their new agricultural worlds were producing only half the expected crop yields, without human soil management techniques. But the crisis went deeper than technology. The humans had also been the galaxy's primary traders, negotiators, and diplomatic couriers. They had built relationships between species that barely tolerated each other, creating trade networks that benefited everyone. With the humans gone, old rivalries and prejudices began to resurface. On the trading station Deep Space Nine, a fight broke out between Corvin and Serpentine merchants over shipping rights. What should have been a minor dispute escalated when both sides discovered that the human mediators who normally handled such conflicts were no longer available. Duidar, humans always found fair solutions, said Station. Administrator Dreknal, a tired-looking Altarian trying to restore order. They understood both cultures and could speak to each side in ways that made sense. Without them, every disagreement becomes a crisis. The problems were worst in the outer territories where humans had been the primary peacekeeping force. Pirate attacks increased dramatically as criminal. Organizations realized that the highly effective human patrol fleets were no longer protecting the trade routes, the cargo hauler destinies. Edge was attacked by raiders while carrying medical supplies to a plague-stricken world in the Rim territories. The ship's Corvin captain, Zexmore, sent desperate distress signals, but the nearest Senate patrol was 3 days away. This never happened when the humans ran security. Zexmore told anyone who would listen after his ship was rescued. Their response time was 6 hours maximum anywhere in the sector. They had ships, sensors, and intelligence networks everywhere. Admiral Kreshta of the Nebular Defense Fleet reviewed the security reports with growing alarm. Piracy incidents had increased by 300% since the human evacuation. Smuggling operations were becoming bolder. Several worlds had requested military assistance that the Senate forces simply could not provide. "We do not have enough ships," she reported to the military council. The humans had patrol fleets throughout the galaxy. "We concentrated our forces in home systems and relied on human forces to maintain order in the frontier regions." "Then deploy more of our ships," ordered Defense Minister Vorthak. "Where? We are already stretched beyond our capabilities. To provide the same coverage the humans maintained, we would need to triple our fleet size." The economic collapse was having political consequences as well. Species that had supported the anti-human vote were now facing angry populations who were suffering from the decision. On the industrial world of Foundry 7, massive unemployment had led to riots as automated factories shut down without human maintenance. The local government, controlled by the Mechanical Federation, was facing demands for new elections. "You promised us that removing the humans would bring prosperity," shouted Citizen Giresh at a public assembly. "Instead, we have poverty and chaos. Our children cannot find work because the factories are broken. Our elderly cannot get medical care because the hospitals cannot maintain their equipment." Similar scenes were playing out across dozens of worlds. The Galactic Senate, which had appeared united in its opposition to humanity, was beginning to fracture as member species blamed each other for the crisis. But Earth had not been idle during these 6 months. In a secure conference room deep beneath the surface of Luna, President Martinez met with his military commanders and intelligence chiefs. The room was shielded against all known forms of electronic surveillance, and the only people present were those with the highest security clearances. "Status report on Project Phoenix," the president said. Admiral Jiang Wei, the head of Earth's Military Research Division, activated a holographic display. "The prototypes are complete and ready for field testing. We've made significant advances in quantum field manipulation, gravitic propulsion, and energy weaponry." "How significant?" asked General Patterson. Jiang smiled grimly. "We can now build ships that are effectively invisible to all known sensor types. Our new propulsion systems can travel between star systems in hours instead of weeks. And our defensive capabilities..." She paused for effect. "Let me put it this way. A single Earth Defense Force destroyer could now engage an entire Senate fleet and have a reasonable chance of winning." Director Hayes leaned forward. "What about our field agents? Are they ready for the next phase?" "The underground networks are in place and functioning perfectly," Hayes replied. "We have assets in key positions throughout Senate space. When we give the signal, we can simultaneously disable critical infrastructure on hundreds of worlds." President Martinez nodded slowly. "And our allies?" "The Corvin Republic is ready to openly break with the Senate," reported Foreign Minister Williams. "The Academic Alliance has already begun ignoring Senate directives. Several smaller species are preparing to withdraw from the Senate entirely. If we time this correctly, we can shatter the anti-human coalition permanently." The president stood and walked to the large window that showed Earth hanging in space above them. 6 months ago, the galaxy voted to expel us. They thought we were becoming too powerful, too dangerous. They wanted to put us back in our place. He turned back to face his advisors. They're about to learn that they were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they thought. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Earth Defense Force monitoring station. "Mr. President," came the voice of the duty officer. "We have a situation. A Senate enforcement fleet is approaching the Sol system. 57 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. They're demanding that we surrender our illegal weapons research and submit to Senate inspection." Admiral Zhang checked her displays. "They've brought everything they have. This is meant to be an overwhelming show of force." President Martinez smiled coldly. "Then let's show them what overwhelming really looks like. Admiral Zhang, you are authorized to deploy the Phoenix-class destroyer EDF Retribution for field testing." "Sir," Zhang said carefully, "the Senate fleet has 57 ships. We would be deploying one." "One is enough," the President replied. "More than enough." In space near the outer edge of the Sol system, the massive Senate fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The lead ship, a Vorthak dreadnought called Crystal Hammer, immediately began broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention Earth forces," came the translated voice of Fleet Admiral Gethmore. "By order of the Galactic Senate, you will surrender all military vessels and submit to inspection for illegal weapons development. You have 1 hour to comply." The response came from an unexpected source. A single ship appeared on their sensors, apparently materializing out of empty space. It was sleek, dark, and unlike any design in the galactic databases. "Senate Fleet," came a calm human voice. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Force Destroyer Retribution. You are in violation of Earth territorial space. You have 10 minutes to withdraw beyond the heliopause or we will expelled." "Call." The crisis began in a place nobody expected. The Vorthak home system. Dr. Elena Vasquez was coordinating resistance activities from her hidden base when the emergency signal came through on all communication channels. The message was simple but terrifying. "Vorthak prime star showing signs of imminent collapse. Estimated time to supernova 72 hours. Elena stared at the message in shock. Vorthak prime was home to over 14 billion crystal beings. It was the heart of the hegemony, the species that had led the vote against humanity. If their star went supernova, it would be the largest loss of life in galactic history. The emergency council session of the Galactic Senate was chaos. Representatives shouted over each other in dozens of languages while translation systems struggled to keep up. Supreme Chancellor Kethmore of the Vorthak stood at the center of the chamber, his ancient crystal body flickering with distress patterns. "Our scientists confirm the readings," he announced, his voice cutting through the noise. "Our star has entered an unstable phase. The stellar core is collapsing. We have perhaps 3 days before the explosion." Senator Hisara of the Serpentine Empire was the first to respond. "What do you need? Ships for evacuation? We cannot evacuate 14 billion people in 3 days," Kethmore replied. "We would need 10,000 starships working continuously. The entire Senate fleet combined could not carry more than a fraction of our population." "Then what?" demanded the representative from the Nebular Collective. "There must be something we can do." Kethamore's body dimmed even further. "Our scientists believe the collapse can be stopped. The star's instability was caused by natural forces, but it can be stabilized using artificial stellar manipulation. However, the technology required is beyond our current capabilities." An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Everyone knew what he meant. "Humans," whispered someone in the gallery. "The humans developed stellar engineering technology 50 years ago." Kethmore continued reluctantly. "They used it to stabilize the star in the Proxima system when it began showing similar instability. Our intelligence indicates they have continued to improve the technology since then." Senator Veltar, Kethmore's own deputy, stood up slowly. "Are you suggesting we ask the species we expelled for help?" "I am suggesting," Kethmore said with obvious pain, "that we set aside politics to prevent the deaths of 14 billion innocent beings." The debate that followed was bitter and desperate. Many senators argued that humanity would never help the species that had betrayed them. Others insisted that asking for human assistance would be seen as weakness and would undermine the Senate's authority. But as the hours passed and reports from Vorthak Prime grew more desperate, reality began to set in. No other species had the technology to save the Vorthak homeworld. On Earth, President Martinez received the Senate's emergency communication in his office, overlooking the restored Amazon rainforest. The message was formal and cold, but the desperation was clear between the lines. The Galactic Senate requests immediate humanitarian assistance to prevent a stellar collapse in the Vorthak home system. We are prepared to offer compensation and limited diplomatic concessions in exchange for aid. Martinez read the message twice, then summoned his advisors. Within an hour, the emergency council was assembled in the secure conference room beneath Luna. "Well," said Admiral Zhang with grim humor, "they want our help. After voting to expel us, seizing our colonies, and trying to intimidate us with a battle fleet. 14 billion lives," said Foreign Minister Williams quietly. "Whatever we think of their government, their people don't deserve to die for their leaders' mistakes." Director Hayes leaned back in his chair. "From a strategic perspective, this is an opportunity. If we save the Vorthak homeworld, we shatter their narrative about humanity being a threat. We show the galaxy that humans value life above politics. And if we refuse," asked General Patterson, "then we're no better than they are," President Martinez said firmly. "Genocide is genocide even if we commit it through inaction." Admiral Zhang frowned. "Sir, the technical challenges are enormous. Stabilizing a collapsing star requires precise gravitational manipulation on a massive scale. We have the technology, but we've never attempted it on this level." "Can it be done?" Martinez asked. "Yes," Zhang replied after a moment, "but we'll need to deploy our entire stellar engineering fleet, and we'll need to work with local scientists who understand the specific characteristics of the Vorthak star." Martinez stood up. "Then we do it. Admiral, begin immediate deployment of the stellar engineering fleet. Director Hayes, coordinate with our underground network to establish communication with Vorthak scientists. Minister Williams, draft our response to the Senate. What should our terms be?" Williams asked. Martinez smiled. "No terms. We save their world because it's the right thing to do. Let them figure out what that means." The human response shocked the galaxy. The Earth Federation will provide immediate assistance to prevent the Vorthak stellar collapse. President Martinez announced in a broadcast to the entire galaxy. "We ask for no payment, no concessions, and no apologies. We act because every sentient life has value, regardless of political differences." Within hours, the largest human fleet ever assembled was moving toward Vorthak space. But these were not warships. They were massive engineering vessels, mobile laboratories, and hospital ships. The fleet was led by the EDF Harmony, a ship designed specifically for stellar manipulation. The Vorthak were stunned. They had expected negotiations, demands, or outright refusal. Instead, humanity had simply said yes and begun moving to help. Dr. Vasquez found herself on one of the lead ships, working directly with Vorthak scientists who had been her enemies just days before. The irony was not lost on her as she collaborated with crystal singer Nethera, one of the galaxy's leading stellar physicists. "Your projections were correct," Nethera admitted as they reviewed the stellar collapse data. "The core destabilization follows the same pattern you observed in the Proxima incident. But the scale is much larger." "Scale doesn't change the principles," Elena replied, manipulating holographic models of stellar structure. "We use gravitational field generators to create artificial pressure points. The star's natural fusion processes will stabilize once we restore proper core compression. The energy requirements are enormous," noted another Vorthak scientist. "Our calculations suggest we would need the power output of a dozen stars to generate the necessary gravitational fields." Elena smiled. "That's why we brought 12 stellar engineering ships. Each one can tap directly into stellar energy and redirect it through gravitational manipulation matrices." The human fleet arrived at Vorthak Prime 36 hours before the projected supernova. What they found was a system in chaos. Evacuation ships crowded the space around the homeworld, but they were nowhere near enough to save even a fraction of the population. Captain Morrison of the EDF Retribution, the same ship that had humiliated the Senate fleet weeks earlier, opened communication with the Vorthak Defense Forces. "Vorthak Command, this is Captain Morrison. Our engineering fleet is ready to begin stellar stabilization procedures. We request that you clear all ships from the solar envelope to prevent interference with our gravitational manipulators." Admiral Torvex of the Vorthak home fleet responded with obvious confusion. "Captain Morrison, we appreciate your arrival, but our sensors show only 12 ships in your fleet. Our own scientists estimate that stellar stabilization would require hundreds of vessels." "Admiral," Morrison replied calmly, "our technology has advanced considerably since the last time we worked together. Please clear the solar envelope, We'll handle the rest. What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. The 12 human engineering ships moved into formation around the dying star. They were tiny compared to the massive ball of plasma that was their star, but as they activated their systems, space itself began to change. Gravitational fields stronger than anything previously imagined reached into the star's core. Energy patterns that had never been seen before danced across the stellar surface. The star's chaotic fluctuations began to smooth out as artificial forces imposed order on the cosmic chaos. For 18 hours, the human ships worked in perfect coordination. Scientists throughout the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated technology that seemed almost magical. They were literally reaching into a star and rebuilding it from the inside. On Vorthak Prime, 14 billion crystal beings looked up at their sky and watched their sun stabilize. The deadly fluctuations that had threatened to destroy their world gradually faded. Their star, which had been on the verge of explosion, returned to stable fusion. The humans had done the impossible. When the crisis was over and the Vorthak system was safe, President Martinez made another galactic broadcast. The stellar stabilization of Vorthak Prime is complete, he announced. The star will remain stable for at least another billion years. We are pleased to have been able to help prevent this tragedy. He paused, looking directly into the camera. But this incident has shown us something important. The galaxy faces challenges that no single species can handle alone. Climate collapse, stellar instabilities, resource depletion, and dozens of other problems require cooperation and shared knowledge.